Begin the current Daf Mesech Kesuvos Daf Samaches. Begin 11 lines down at the top of the Yomid. The Gemara continues with a related discussion from the previous Daf regarding someone who is deceptive when it comes to the halachas of charity, which the Gemara had parenthetically mentioned because we were talking about giving tzedakah and people that would rather jump in the oven than embarrass someone when they were giving them tzedakah. And then they talked about a case where someone was actually fooled by the people they gave tzedakah to, and they said, oh, it's good that they fooled us because or else we would be sinners, we would never get tzedakah. And the Gemara continues on that theme about someone being deceptive for tzedakah. Truth corresponds to like Kasach and Cheskot for any time Daf Yomi. We're doing this for today's Daf. Some of the discussing today's Daf are regarding the laws of tzedakah. The ein mechayven is limkres base is klitash mishai. That if someone is eligible for matnas aniyim because he doesn't have 200 zuz, that's without selling his belongings. Doesn't have to sell his stuff and say, well, you could afford, stuff. Just sell off some of your assets. He's not obligated to do that. The Yisemi Ketana, the next mission discusses regarding she can extract an Isur Nechasim, a tenth of the estate from the Yoshim when she matures to use towards in the dunya for getting married. The Machlek is if a Nari Yisema, they got married and a Begeris, two different cases, are entitled to Isur Nechasim when they reach that stage. Does she lose her rights to an Isur Nechasim? And we have the Machlikas of Shom and Ba'av. Do we evaluate when the father's not here anymore how much he would have given, or no, do we go based on how much we assume a regular person would give? So important terms of the concept we're discussing today's Daf are matnas aniyim, which the gifts that are given to the poor, is leket, shikha, pay, all these, they have to be an ani. So the qualification is, if he doesn't have Masayim Zuz, then he gets matnas aniyim. If he has Masayim Zuz, then he's not considered a pauper and he has no rights to matnas aniyim. The Mishnah discusses regarding the dunya b'chayav and the dunya l'achmizav. When the father's alive, the halacha of the Mishnah tells him that he shouldn't give her less than 50 zuz. When he passed away, where he's not around to give, so then the basin is in tzvina and the tebas isur nechasim, she takes a tenth from the estate from the Yershim. So we begin the current Daf. 11 lines down at the top of the Yom, really just finishing up a conversation from the previous Daf regarding the laws of tzedakah, which we had a big discussion on that whole other days regarding tzedakah. So talking about the brayso, hamasami es einon. If someone makes as if he's blind, or v'amatzvez bitno, or someone inflates his belly, or v'hamakapech sheikoi, he makes as if his thigh is truncated, it's like cut off. Meaning essentially he's making believe that he's an ill person, that he needs tzedakah. So he's not going to be let go from the world until he comes to that type of situation. Then he's actually going to have that type of situation that he's going to be blind and he's going to have all these situations. So if someone receives charity and he doesn't need it, then he's not going to pass away from the world until he comes to that type of situation. He's going to need tzedakah. So a person has to be careful not to be deceptive when it comes to his status, his stature, regarding his needs. A related discussion regarding if someone is eligible for tzedakah or not, so that regarding matnas aniyim. So it's not hospital within the Mishnah Mesech is payah. The ratio of the Mishnah they were saying that whoever has 200 zuz, he's not allowed to take the matnas aniyim of leket, which are the gleanings that fall down, the shikha, the forgotten bundles, the pay, the corn of the field. But on that the Mishnah continues and says, ein mechayven is a limkar as base of his klitash mishay. We don't obligate him to sell his house and his utensils to supplement the 200 zuz so that he shouldn't take tzedakah and matzanim. If he has cash, 200 zuz, then he's not allowed to take. But if he has assets, he doesn't have to sell it off. That's what the Mishnah says in pay. Says the Gemara below, he doesn't have to sell off. But in the brayso, if the guy would use golden stuff, so sell it off. You saying you can't have, you want 10 chishavas, sell your golden bowls and use silver. If he used to use B'kli Kesef, sell it. Yishtamish B'kli Nechash, use copper. So we have a clear contradiction on the Mishnah Mesechtes Payah. Mishnah Payah says you don't have to sell your stuff to have 200 zuz, and the price says clearly, you had a Ferrari, sell it, buy a Sentra. It drives, trust me. It's not, you have something, so do you have to sell off your stuff or not to be considered on the... So Amar Zviri says, like Kasha, it's not a difficulty. He says, the brayso that obligates you to sell is b'mita b'shulchan, a bed, a table. But the Mishnah that says you don't have to is b'kaises v'ka'aras, our bowls and plates. So the Gemara says, wait a second, why are you saying bowls and plates that the wealthy guy who lost all his money and he wants to collect from Temple Shabbos doesn't have to sell his china because the Amr says, He says, I can't eat on plastic. What do you want? I need this. I can't sell it, and I have no money for food. Give me food. But mita b'shulchan, a bed and a table also. He says, I can't sleep on this. This is not a mattress. This is not a bed. This is not a table. I can't eat on this rickety thing. He says, I need my things I was used to. So what's the difference? Why is that a good answer to say that what you have to sell or not would be a difference between a bed and bowls? So rather, the Gemara says, Amar Rava Bereder Rava. He says the Brais is talking about a specific case, the Machresha de Kaspa. Literally, it means to say a silver plow. But on the side of the Gemara, they bring that it means it's a type of tool they would use to scrape themselves in the bathhouse. So for that, a silver scraper is not something that's a necessity of like I can't tolerate it. It wouldn't make a difference if it's a lower quality. It's just symbolic. So that's not something that he could claim to say that I wouldn't feel comfortable. It's something I'm not used to. I need a waterbed. I need a this or that. That's something you could say that I could understand. And therefore, that's something he would have to sell if he lost his money, not to collect tzedakah to be considered as an ani. But you're right. Everything else he wouldn't have to sell, like the Mishnah teaches him Masechtas Pei. Or another approach, where Papa he says like kasha. They're actually talking about different cases, meaning when we learned in the Mishnah Pei that says you don't have to sell off your stuff if the guy lost all his money in stocks and he's left with nothing, has no cash, can't put bagels on the table, he still has a beautiful house, all the things, doesn't have to sell. That's kodim sheyavu de gibui. That's before the courts were collecting from him. What does that mean? Meaning when he's coming to collect leket and he doesn't have 200 zuz. If he would sell his cars, his bikes, and everything, he would get 200 zuz. You're right. The Mishnah Masechtas Pei says he doesn't have to sell it. But the Bryce that says we make you sell your stuff, make a big yard sale and put out all that fancy stuff, that's la'achar sheyavu de gibu. That's talking about when he made himself come to a situation that the court is collecting from him. What does that mean? Why would the court be collecting from him? Let's say he actually had 200 zuz, but he was still taking leket shechapeya. Then the courts find out the guy was wealthy. The guy had enough for food on the table. So why was he coming collecting from the matnasanim? So the courts come and now they're going to collect what you took. Now, if he doesn't have what to pay back, now you got to sell your stuff and use lesser stuff to pay back to the courts. So that's the difference. If you initially did not own 200 zuz, besides the belongings, you don't have to sell it. But if initially you did own 200 zuz and he took, and now the courts are coming to back collect from what you took, that's something that you even have to sell your items to go ahead and pay back the courts. The next Mishnah, continuing the theme of the previous Mishnah, is regarding the Nadunya that the woman brings into the marriage, the dowry. So the Mishnah says as follows: regarding the orphan girl, that her mothers or her brothers, which rabbinically they can go ahead and they get her married. If they get her married, even with her consent, which that's a chiddush, that to say even though she's okay with this, her mechila, which is she's not getting the amount that she would really get from the estate, is not going to be considered as a valid mechila. So let's say let's say they write for her that an adunya is going to be 100 or 50 zuz, which is not the amount that she is allowed to get once that her father passed away and they're getting it from the state. They give her very little. When she gets older, she could take away from her brothers from the estate what was appropriate for her to be given, which is, as we're going to see right now, the second half of the Mishnah, of Isu Nechasim, which is that she's allowed to get 1/10 of the estate for her Nadunya, and the brothers, when they married her off, this rabbinic marriage, they gave her just a little bit, so that's not considered as a mechila. That mechila is not a mechila, and she's able to collect the rest when she gets older. Now, Yehuda Aimer, now the Mishnah discusses regarding the halacha of when the girl is collecting. So if the father married off when he was still alive, as Abasa Rishayna, the first daughter, he gave her a certain amount. So he should give to the second daughter the way he gave to the first daughter. Meaning, whether it was 1/10 of his estate, whether it was less, whether it was more, Yehuda holds that we evaluate the father. And we give exactly how he gave by the first daughter. Now that he's not alive, we're going to give the same amount to the second one. The sages, they disagree. They say, how can you say that? At times a person is poor, so he gave a certain amount. When he becomes wealthy, he's going to give more. or he's wealthy and then becomes poor, he's going to give less. So how can you say that what he gave by the first daughter is going to be the second daughter? He suddenly made it big and he sold off his company and he's obviously the second chassan not a takana wedding there anymore. He's going to have a 20-piece band and he made it big. So how can you say what's the first daughter is going to be the second daughter? Rather, say the chacham shomanis and the chasim. Rather, we evaluate the estate, meaning how much a normal person with that type of money would give. But that's not, and that's how much you give her in the dunya. So not necessarily like the first daughter is the second daughter. Rather, you go based on the value of the estate at that time. Now, relating back to the halacha, the Mishnah, the Amr Shmuel says the following teaching: Lefarnasa, which parnasa in this context means if you have a girl that's a yisayim that's coming to get married, so you give her nedunya. Parnasa is a key word for nedunya, which is for the dowry. So how do you give the parnasa? It's shaman ba'av. That's what Shmuel says. According to what we evaluate about knowing the father, if he was a generous guy, he was a stingy guy, the way we know him, he's not alive anymore, but knowing how we know him, that's how much we're going to give to the daughter for nedunya. That's what Shmuel said. On that, the Gemara asks, Meisvei, the Gemara says from the following brayso. There's a lot of technical parts in this daf, so it's just about understanding the halacha. If you have a daughter, the habanis nizaynis, the girls are fed or misparnasis and they get parnasa, minich savin from their father's estate. Okay, a girl that's an orphan will get from the estate. Ketza household says the brayso ain ayman. We don't say ilu v'yakayim. Had our father been alive, kach v'kach, you still have this and this. How much you would have given her? No, you don't do that. Which is clearly contradicting Shmuel, because Shmuel said you do evaluate the father, and that's how much you give. Here the Brayso is saying, no, you don't say, had the father been alive, he would have given this and this. You evaluate the estate and you give it to him. Says the Gemara, my love, isn't the Brayso telling us, parnasas habal. What does it mean, parnasas habal? So that means to say the nedunya of marriage, when she's getting married to her husband, how much do you take from the father's estate? Not based on evaluating him. Rather, we evaluate the estate. They clearly contradict Shmuel, who said, for Farnasa, which is the Nedunya, you shaman ba'av, you evaluate what you think the father would have given. So remember, not mitzvah. He says, Loi, no, but Parnasas atzma. What's Parnasas atzma? Again, these are all key words which Rashi tells us. Parnasas atzma means to say her mezainis. When she's still by the brothers, that's what we're saying, that we don't say, had the father been alive, how much you would have given. Rather, we just evaluate what the state is, and Taisa explains why. Why by mezainis are we not evaluating the father? Because he has to give mezainis to his, when he passes away, to his daughter, because of the Tanai of Bezin. It's in the Ksuba that your daughters are going to get fed from my estate after he passes away. But the Parnasas Habal, which is the Dunya, that actually only depends on the father, like the Gemara tells us later on. If someone says, I don't want my daughters to get from my estate, it's actually the last words on today's daf, we listen to him. So therefore, we do evaluate how much the father would have given. So therefore says the Gemara, no, it's not a contradiction. The Bryce that says we don't evaluate is talking about Mezainas. Shmuel was talking about Parnasa, which is about the Nedunya. That is totally dependent on the father. So it's not a contradiction at all. But the Gemara says, how could you say such an answer? Ha-Nezainas u'misparnasas katani. You're telling me Parnasas atzma is a key word for Mezainas. You're telling me that's what Parnasa means. But the problem, it already says Nezainas u'misparnasas. Obviously, Nezainas is the Mezainas and Parnasas is the Nedunya. My love, isn't it? Achaz Parnasas abal. It's talking about how much we're giving her for her to get married to her husband, which is Nedunya. Achaz Parnasas asma. One's talking about providing for herself, which is Mezainas. So we're back to the question. Obviously, the Bryce is saying not like Shmuel that you're not shaman this up. Says no, either Parnasas asma. Both are talking about for herself. But kasha, not difficult because the word Mezainas is ha b'achila b'shtir. That's regarding food and drink. For ha, this we're using the word Parnasa is b'lavusha v'kisuya. Is regarding clothing, which then we evaluate the estate, and that is if he's poor, we give her according to what we learned in Parak Afal Piyan of some of the Dalma Bays, when you're providing, let's say, a wife to a third party, and we said if there's a large estate, then we go all according to the covenant. That will be the same thing regarding the girl that's the Yisayma from her father's estate is going to get for clothing and for food and drink based on how much you evaluate the estate is. But halacha of Parnasa, meaning Parnasa Sabal about Nedunya, that Shmuel still stands correct to say that you're Shaman Ba'al. However, Tanan, this is where it relates back to halacha of Mishnah. Learn the Mishnah, the sages, they say, Pa'am sha'adim ani v'heshet. We said the Chum disagree with Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda said that whatever you give to the first daughter, we're going to give to the second daughter. Chacham said, wait a second, how can you say that? Sometimes a guy is not, he's poor, he was in school then, and Behesher, or he was working on a startup, he didn't have bread and butter, and then he became wealthy. Some of the guy's wealth and he loses it. So how could we say that the second one's going to be the same as the first one? Ella, what did the Chacham say? We evaluate the estate, whatever it is at the point of when the second daughter, who's now a Yisaima, and we give her that amount. So the Gemara explains what are these words that Chachamim mean. My ani, my asher. What does it mean that sometimes he's poor, sometimes he's wealthy? Inim, if you say it literally as we were translating up until now, ani means ani min chasim, poor in his assets, and asher, wealthy means asher min chasim, wealthy in his assets. The problem is then you can't really understand the first opinion. The inference is the Tanakh of Rabbi Yehuda held that a full of asher beheni sounds like from the words of Chacham say, how can you say it's going to be the same as the first order? Sometimes he's wealthy, lose money, and therefore can't be the same. And what Rabbi Yehuda, who says it is the same, what? A fellow asher behani, you're saying even if he's wealthy, he became poor, you're going to give as he gave the first time around by his daughter when he was a mega? But how could you say Yavinullah halesle? He doesn't have. He lost it. There's no more money in the family. So how can you say you're going to give the second daughter as you give the first one? So the Gemara doesn't like that to translate. That's what the Chachamim mean, because then Rabbi Yehuda wouldn't make sense. Elav, rather, what does it mean ani? Ani badas. He's a very, they're very into the growth mindset and there's the fixed mindset. They have all these. So this guy, he's in his consciousness, he's poor, where he doesn't plan on giving her the dunya of a wealthy person, rather than the dunya of a poor man. And asher means asher b'das, means wealthy in his consciousness, in his mindset, which, according to Yehuda, we always give as we gave by the first one. Now, but what did we learn by the Chachamim? They say shamanes and nechasim and neisla. So they say we don't know if he's sometimes a usher, sometimes a handy, meaning not money wise, because money wise, if there's no money, we wouldn't give. We just sometimes a guy is in a breita, and sometimes he's a very kleiner. So we don't know. How can we evaluate? It depends on his mindset. So that's what it means, asher beheni or heni b'hasher. So Rabbi Yehuda doesn't differentiate. He says, no, if he has money, we're going to give as a gift with the first order. But what are the Chacham saying? No, we're evaluating the estate, we're going to give it to her. So you see from the Chachamim, we don't go after the umdana of the father to evaluate how much we think he would have given. Rather, we say, how much would a regular guy that's got a few million, how much would he give for his daughter when she's getting married for the chasna? So it's Yufta the Shmuel, they refute Shmuel. Shmuel said that you're shaman ba'ab. You evaluate the father, saying, okay, we know him. How much do you think he would have given? That's how much we got to give. Chacham say clearly not like that. They say, no, shaman es nachasim. We don't know what his mindset would be. We don't evaluate him. So we have a contradiction on Shmuel from the Chachamim of our Mishnah that you're not shaman ba'ab, rather you're shaman es nachasim. Says the Gemara, that's not difficult on Shmuel. Huda, Rabbi Yehuda. That's the first. There's a machlekes in our Mishnah. He was like the first ben Rabbi Yehuda. Did not like in the Mishnah. The first ben Rabbi Yehuda, he says, if the first daughter had been married when the father was still alive, you give to the second daughter the way you give to the first one. And if we don't know, so then we'll evaluate by the father how much he would have given. But it goes based on how much we know the father to be his type, not the nechasim, but not evaluating the nechasim, evaluating the father. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, why didn't Shmuel just say halach Rabbi Yehuda? Why is he saying his own Torah when it's essentially halach Rabbi Yehuda? Says the Gemara, no, iyam halach Rabbi Yehuda had Shmuel only said halach Rabbi Yehuda. I mean, I would have said dafka hesiya. Then it's specifically like the case of the Mishnah. Only if the first daughter had been married, the father was, let's say, in his mid-40s, and then he passed away. He already married off one daughter. Oh, so that's where Rabbi Yehuda says in our Mishnah, the Goli Daite. He already revealed his intention. We don't know up until it comes time for Chasna. Wow, what the party this guy's putting on. Right? We didn't know this about him. Okay, we see this way he did for his first daughter. Makes sense, the second daughter should be the same. But if he never made Chasna, he was 37, never got a chance to make a Chasna. So maybe I would say that not. We can't evaluate the father. We don't know. We never saw him by a chasna. We didn't see those invitations with the gold embossed, with 7 papers inside, with each one thick like a cardboard box. We don't know. Kamash Malon, therefore he had to say that no, when it comes to Nadunya, when it comes to Parnasa, Shom and Ba'ab we're going to evaluate. Now, But then he explains, if he's really going based on Rabbi Yehuda, if time Rabbi Yehuda, there's lin basa umdina. So the truth is, really, Rabbi Yehuda is going based on because we evaluate the father. And the truth is, lois no haysiya, b'lois no haysiya. Yehuda himself really doesn't differentiate if he had married off a daughter or not. Alright, so then the haidikton haysiya, then why is he talking about a case when he had first married off a daughter? And that's why you told me you don't say Allah Rabbi Yehuda, because you would have thought it's only if you marry off a daughter, and if not, we wouldn't go in the value because we wouldn't necessarily know. And we're saying no, we do. But why then Rabbi Yehuda talks about a case specifically haysiya? Because we want to tell you the strength of the second opinion of the disputants, that the avagav the siyah begoli died the chum are a chiddush, and the case of Messiah is to tell the chiddush of the rabban, even though he once made chassan before, and he really revealed his attention that he likes a big band and he's going to give a huge nadin for his daughter. Even so, the chacham say we don't go based on evaluating the father, his personality, his characteristic. Rather, we shaman this nachasim, whatever we have in the estate. That's how much money we're going to go based on that, but we're not going to go based on the father. So yes, the Chacham are not like Shmuel, but Shmuel rules like Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore he says Shaman Ba'af. Now, the Gemara continues now. They expound in your name that you're saying officially, they were saying in your name, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, that the second daughter is like the first daughter. That whatever we gave by the first, meaning Shaman Ba'af, we evaluate the father, we don't go based on the Nechasim. So on that he responded, Rav Chizda said back to Rava, Rava may be the will that Kol Kihani Milim Al Yasa, that such beautiful teachings, Tiddush and Mishmoy, that they should expound in my name. Now the problem is, so this was Rava saying to Rav Chizda, as if he agreed to this idea that Halach Rabbi Yehuda, because Rav Nachman responded and says, yeah, Halavai they would darshan that I say such a beautiful teaching. And Rava didn't respond. So it sounds like Rava agrees that the Halach is like Rabbi Yehuda, that Shaman Ba'av. When it comes to giving the dunya for the girl that's a widow, that's an orphan, we're going to go based on how much we evaluate the father would have given. Says the Gemara, did Rabbi really say this? But Rabbi Yomi, he says, Rabbi says if a daughter is getting fed from the brothers, meaning she's an orphan, but she's getting fed, meaning she's there as a minor. They tell us Isur Nechasim. So she takes a tenth of the estate from the dunya, and not, like Rashi points out, Shaman Ba'af. We don't evaluate how much the father would have given. Maybe we would have given more, maybe we would have given less. We don't evaluate based on the father. We give a tenth of the estate. And V'omar Rava, this same Rava, said Hilchas Rebbe. So that's a clear contradiction. How could Rava say, the way Rav Nachman responding to Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda, that Shaman Ba'af, we evaluate how much would the father have given. Yet, he also says, Halacha Kirebi, that we go based on the tenth of the estate, not Shaman Ba'af. Says the Gemara, like Kash, is not difficulty. Why? This that Rav is saying, like Rabbi Yehuda, is the Amidne, is when we evaluate the father, when we know him. This that he's saying, like Rebbe, did you give a tenth of the estate, is the Loya Midne, is when we don't have the father evaluated, meaning he never lived amongst us. We don't know him. Was he a generous person? Was he a stingy person? So it depends. Both are true. If we know him, we're going to go based on Shaman Ba'af. That's what he said, Halach is like Rabbi Yehuda. When he said Halach is like Rabbi, that you go based on a tenth of the estate, is when we don't know him. He didn't live amongst us, so that we're going to give only a tenth. As the Gemara says, it's logical to say like this, that even Rebbe agrees. Rebbe, who we quoted as saying that you give a tenth of the estate, he would agree that if we know the father, that you would be shown Ba'af. Why? Because there's another teaching. He says, Maisa, there was a story. Rebbe gave the orphan girl, when she was getting married, 1/12 of the estate. Kashna Dade. You have a contradiction in Rebbe. You just quoted Rebbe as saying that you give a tenth. He's saying you give a 12th, meaning that was the story. So how's that possible? Rather, obviously we hear from this that when did we give a 12th? Because we knew the father. We know the father would have given that amount. He would have given this amount, and therefore that was a 12th. With the other case, with the father we don't know, we don't have any evaluation, that we give a set amount of attention. So obviously that resolves the contradiction with Rava too. Now, Gufa, we learned in this teaching we just quoted that Rebbe said, if you have a daughter that's getting fed from the brothers, so they tell us she takes a tenth of the estate for the nedunya, for the dowry when she's getting married. So they said to Rebbe, according to your opinion that you hold that the girl gets a tenth of the nedunya, of the estate for nedunya, So Mishish like Esabanis to Ben. Someone has, he should be benched 10 girls and 1 son. That means to say that the son's not going to have any Yerusha because the 10 girls are going to get married, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and boom, goodbye. The whole inheritance was taken by the girl. Someone had, Rebbe said to them, no, Kachani, this is what I was saying. Rishayna, the first one, which the Gemara assumes what it means to say is the first one to come to get married. She's, they tell us, Isnachas. The oldest girl, she takes a 10th of the estate. Shniya b'mashashayda. The second one takes a 10th of what she left over. Rishlish is b'mashashayda, the third one a 10th of what she left over. And, so again, they're not taking a 10th, 10th, 10th. It's a 10th of whatever's left over. So there's still going to be a nice chunk left over for the son. But then he says, v'choizes v'cholkis b'shav. He says another idea. He says this, that they get a 10th, a 10th, a 10th, and when it's coming out, the later girl to get married is getting a lesser 10th, right? A 10th of 90 is only 9. Each one's going to be getting less and less and less. So he says, no, what happens is each one takes a 10th, then they put it all together in the pot, and then they equally divide all those 10ths amongst themselves. So the older girls are not going to get more than the other ones. So the Gemara continues on with days and asks, wait a second, why? Why are you saying that? Every single one should take what she gets. I mean, the Chacham instituted that the Nedunya for marriage is a 10th of the estate. The first one that gets married first gets a 10th of what she has then. And the second one gets a 10th of what's left then. So why are you telling me that they then have to put it into the pot and divide it equally into 10 parts with each girl? Why doesn't the older sister get more than the younger one? Because it's whatever 10th at that point. So the Gemara says, you're right. This I have to read Rebbe's words. If they're all coming to get married at the same time, then chalkis b'shav. Then they equally divide, because now you don't have any rights of like being early or being first. So therefore, because we want to leave over the rest for the son, so what you do is you take as if one is taking a 10th, the second one a 10th of what she left over, and so on. And the leftovers for the son. So let's say there's 100 mana, one takes 10 mana, second one takes 9, third one takes 8 and a 10th, and so on and so forth, so that you can verify what's the Yerusha of the son. Then they go and they divide equally whatever all those 10ths were, because they're all getting married at the same time, but just each one can't take a 10th, because then the son will be left with nothing. So as long as they're getting married at the same time, that's when we're saying this halacha. But you're right, if they're getting married at different times, then whoever's first gets her 10th, and so on and so forth. The Gemara says, Mesa'il of Masna, this supports Rav Masna. Because Amar Masna, he says this halacha. He says, if they're all coming to get married at the same time, they tell us, Isra Echad, they take 1/10. The Gemara says, what? Isra Echad Sokadaitach, if all coming to get married at the same time, they take 1/10? Ella, rather, no, at least Isra Echad. They take their 10ths as one. Meaning, they take the 10th of that, which keeps on getting less, 9, 8, and 10, and whatever this and that. They put it into a bucket, and then they go ahead and they divide it equally, those 10ths. But again, if it's at different times, then of course they're going to get it according to whatever the 10th is.
And if they don't get married at the same time, then they each take a 10th of the...
Yeah, of what's left over, because that's the 10th at that time. Then that's it, right. Yeah.
So the first girl gets more than the
right.
rest.
Right. It's only if they get married at the same time. Now, says the Eternal in the Brisa, the Torah discusses that why is that when they're getting married. Eternal in the Brisa, Bonais, the daughters, Bein Bagru. So this is where we get a little bit more sophisticated machlekes. Habanais, the daughters, Bein Bagru actually Nisu. If let's say they became a begeres, which is an adult of 12 and a half, but she didn't get married yet. Ubein Nisu, whether she got married as a naira, actually Bagru, but she's not yet a begeres. So the halacha is if the mezainis same, they lose their mezainis. They don't get fed from the state anymore. Why? Because that's actually what's written in the Ksuba. This Tanai Bezin that the daughters are going to be fed, it says that your daughters, this is what he writes to his wife when he's getting married, that your daughters are going to eat from my estate. It says, Oy atzitevagran, either up until they become a begeres, then they're old enough to fend for themselves, or until they're going to be taken by men, meaning married, even if they're not a begeres, let's say as a nair. So they're not going to get mezainis anymore. But they don't lose their right to the 10th of the estate, which is what they get for the nedunya. That they're still going to get according to Rabbi. Shimon Lazami says, no. They even lose their parnasa, meaning they even lose the nedunya of a tenth of the estate. Why? Because he holds that the whole nedunya was only instituted only if she gets married as a minor or as a naira. But if she's a bagetes already, then she's removed from that house totally, and therefore she's not getting any more in the dunya. So too, if she gets married as a naira, since she's already an adult, and she's okay with what was given to her, so her mechila is a mechila because she's an adult, which generally a minor cannot be meichel. So then she loses the parnasa, besides for what they decided to give her. But if she gets married as a minor, then no one's going to disagree that her mechila is not a valid mechila, and therefore she could still go ahead and collect that nedunya, that parnasa of a tenth of the estate. Now, continues the Brisa, Ketzid Hin Isis. What should they do if you're saying, according to Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, they lose their parnasa once they get married, so or they become a begetes? So what could they do to avoid this problem? Very simple. This is similar when people are trying to get green cards or seichers lehen bailim. They hire husbands to marry them until they don't become a begetes. If they get married as a minor, everyone agrees that the mechila is not a mechila. So they're going to be able to take away the parnasa then when they're getting married to get a tenth of the estate, because if they're ready to become begetes, or they get married as a naira, they're already going to lose their chance. If they get husbands now when they're a minor, they're going to be able to get the tenth of the estate. So that's what they would do to make sure that they don't lose out, because if they're already 12 and a half, you're already out of the house, you're already expiration date, and you're not going to be able to get, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, your Isun L'chazim. Amr Rav Nachman says, Amali Huna said to me, Hilchas like Rabbi, Halacha follows like Rabbi, that no, they don't lose their parnasa. Even if she's a begetes already, even if she got married as naira, that doesn't make her lose as if that her mechila of her parnasa. However, Eitzvei Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asked on Rav Nachman, who just said this teaching, he asked him an halacha of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, if you have an orphan girl that her mother or brother married her off with her consent, and they wrote for her very little, for the dunya was 150 zuz. So he said in the Mishnah, she's able to, when she becomes older, to take out from them what was appropriate to get, let's say the tenth of the estate. Even though they gave her very little, she's able to go get back when she gets older. But one thing says the Gemara, it sounds like time of the Ketana, it sounds like because she got married as a minor, which it was coming to her a tenth of the estate, although she was a 10-year-old girl, she was like, oh, okay, 100, so it's amazing, yeah, I'm going to get married to him, fine. She gets older, hey, you guys ripped me off. So they get a tenth of the estate, then she's going to get it. But it sounds like Hagadayla, but if she's already an adult, meaning like a Naira, that Vitra, that she's Michael, she pardons the rest and she loses it. Obviously, we see that our Stam Masnitin, our Mishnah anonymously, is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar, not like Rabbi. So how can you paskin, how can you rule the halacha, says you Reb Nachman saying the name of Rav Huna, that halacha is like Rabbi, that she does not lose the parnasa, meaning if she became a naira already or begetes. But we see in our Mishnah that's only because she was a kitana, and then she's like, hey, you guys owed it to me, then she could get it. But it's not like if she was older than the kitana, if she was already a naira that got married, if she was already an adult, that she lost it because she was Michael. So you see why you pass like Rabbi when the Stam Masnitin of our Mishnah is like Rav Shimon ben Elazar. So it's more like Kasha, it's not difficult. Why? Because that Rebbe's saying that she does not lose it when she's already an adult, and Rav Huna is saying the halach is like him, is the machai, is when she protested on the extra of the tenth of the estate that she didn't get when she got married as a naira. When we saying in the Mishnah that if she was an adult that she did, that she was Michael, it's delay machai, she didn't protest. So that depends if she protested or not. If she protested, then yes, she could still collect, even though she's an adult. If she didn't protest, then she cannot collect. The Gemara says it's logical to say like this. Why? Because if you don't give the answer we just gave, you have another contradiction. You have kasha de Rebbe ad Rebbe. Because the Tanya in the Brisa, Rabbi Yomi says, Basan is if the daughter is getting fed from the brothers. We said, Natelas Isna Chasim, she takes a tenth of the estate for her Nadunya. Now the inference is, Nizainis. Sounds like if she's coming to get married when she's still getting fed, which is when she's a Katana or a Naira, because like we said, when she reaches Bagras, she's not in the parsha where she doesn't get fed. Sounds like only then yes, that's when she gets a tenth of the estate for her Nadunya. She'ain in Mezainis law, but if she's not getting fed, then no, she's not going to be able to get her Parnasa anymore. What do you mean? We just quoted before that he said that even if she's Bagra, he says that Lo Yibdu Parnasasan. Well, so then we have a contradiction on this price that says that it's only when she's Mezainis that she gets it. So, obviously, where you infer from this is what we mentioned before that Rebbe holds that she's not going to lose the parnasa when she protests when she's getting married. Oh, so then she's still going to be able to get the Isu Nechasa. Over here that Rebbe's saying she cannot get it if she already was an adult, was the Loi Machai if she didn't protest. If she didn't protest, so then she's Vitra, she already was Michael, Shema Menasa. Obviously the answer we're giving also is going to resolve the contradiction of Rebbe to say it depends if she's protesting or not. When she's like, well, I'm not giving you this up although I'm getting older. So then she's going to be able to collect. If she's not protesting, then later on, you already were Michael already, and if we don't get Shema Menasa. So Amalei Rabbeinu L'Rava says, Amalan Rav Ada Barhava Mishmecha. Rav Ada Barhava told us in your name, Rava, that Bagra, if she becomes 12 and a half, she doesn't have to protest. Meaning, even if she doesn't protest, she's not going to lose a tenth of her estate. Nisis, she got married as a Naira, which is the other equivalent case, also in the she doesn't have to protest. Bagra Benisis, if she became an adult and she got married, then tzricha limchas, then obviously she has to be protesting. And if she's not going to, then that's implicit mechila on her nadunya. Says the Gemara, did Rava really say this teaching that they said over in his name? But Rava asked on Rav Nachman, which we quoted this teaching of Rav Nachman just before, that a naira that gets married, he said that the halacha is like Rabbi, that lo yimdu parnasas. She didn't lose her parnasa. She wasn't Michael. He asked, as we quoted this before, from Yisayna, from our Mishnah, which was the case of, it sounds like only when she's being zenis mina achen, then it's not being Michael. But if she was written adult, it would sound like Vitra. I mean, this is what the Gemara just mentioned before, that Rav had asked under Nachman on his halacha from our Mishnah. The Shanile, and what did Rebbe answer? What did the Rava answer? What did Rav Nachman answer and Rava heard? Is when did we say the halacha is like Rebbe is the machi? Is when she's protesting. If she's protesting, maybe she became begettes, she'll be able to get Isin Nechasa. This that we learned that if she in our Mishnah, if she's an adult, it's Vitra, she's being Michael, is the loy machi, if she's not protesting. Wait a second, so obviously you see that when she gets married in Nairus, and she's not Michael, she's not protesting, even if she's not a begettes, she's Vitra, she's being Michael. And you're saying that if she gets married, she doesn't have to be Michael even when she's a Naira? But this was what they themselves answered in that contradiction, that you would have to be Michael. So that's the way he resolved the teaching of Rav Nachman from our Mishnah to his teaching from Rav Huna. So how can you say that you don't have to be Michael? Says Gemara, not difficult. Why? This that Rabbi said that if you get married as a Naira, she does not have to protest, is to come misazne minayu, is which she's getting mezainis from the brothers, even after she's getting married. Okay, they're still providing for her. That's why she's quiet. But not because she's being Michael on her in the dunya, because she just doesn't want to say anything. She's embarrassed. They're giving me a weekly check for the grocery bill. I'm not going to start making a big fuss about in the dunya. But that would not be a raya that she's being Michael. When did we say in our Mishnah that if she's an adult, that she obviously is being Michael, if she wasn't Michael, it's a loikum masaz deminai. She's not getting fed from them. Not getting fed from them. She should have been Michael. The fact that she was not Michael is implicit that she's being Michael. So it's not a contradiction either on this point of Rava, because that depends if she's getting fed from them or not. Now, continue on the theme we mentioned before. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rabbi. He says Panasa, the Nadunya, is in the Ketnai Ksuba. It's not like the Tanai Ksuba. What does it mean, the Tanai Ksuba? One of the stipulations in the Ksuba is that the daughter is going to get fed when the father passed away. As we learned in the Mishnah on Daf Beis, B'na Nukvin, your female daughters will get fed from my estate. So we're saying the Nadunya is not like the halacha mezainis. So the Gemara says, "My Kenai Ksuba." What do you mean that the Nadunya is not like that halacha mezainis? Inem, if you're going to say the following difference, the ilu parnasa now, whereas when it comes to the nedunya, tarfa memeshabdi, which Rashi explains which mishabadim are we talking about. We're talking about that the brothers had collateral, that they were mishabeded, they sold it off to somewhere else. Not that the father was mishabed, because the halachic obligation of feeding the daughter only starts after the father passed away. So obviously it wouldn't be going on the mishabadim of the father, but that of, let's say, the brothers. Let's say the brothers did business now with the father's estate, and they sold off a lot of stuff. So there's a shibur, there's nachasim mishabadim, she has a lien on those properties that for her nedunya, for let's say the 10th of the estate, she could collect from the chasim mishabadim. Whereas it's an aiksuba, but the stipulation is that of mezainis, like taf mishabdi, she cannot collect from mishabadim even that which the brothers sold off. Because the Mishnah teaches Masechet this Giddah from Chesma Beis, you cannot collect for achilas peiros, for shvach kakais. These are different categories, and one of them is mazon isha v'habanis, for the daughters getting fed. You cannot collect that from the chasim mishabadim. Why? Because of what's called tikkun olam. Now, the reason for that is because you don't know how much money you're going to need for mezayin, so no one's going to want to buy ever because we don't know how to be careful from. We don't know how long or whatever it is. Now, parnasa, which is the nedunya, which is a 10th of the estate, that she could collect from the chasim mishabadim because the rabbis made her in that effect like a balchayv, like a creditor on the 10th of the estate when the father passed away, because that's a set amount. You know how much it is, and if you're buying from the estate, you know that there's a lien over here. But mezainis, which does not have a set amount, that's tikkun olam, that you can't collect mezainis, and she might never get married, and she might whatever it is, or up until we don't know how much food she's going to need. So it's anything that does not have a set amount, you cannot collect from the chasim mishabadim. What has a set amount, you could. So the question is, if that's the difference you're telling me, what exactly is this gracious statement that he's saying from Rabbi that panas not like kedai ksuba? This happens every single day. We always extract from the shabadim that the brothers had sold off for the nedunya. So we don't collect for the mezayin. So, like, why do you need to tell me this? Like a grace halacha is ma'asim b'chol yom. This is what people do every single day. This we know. Rather a different halacha is telling us. The ilu parnasa now, whereas regarding the nedunya gavin namim metaltli, you could collect even from metaltli, from movable items. Whereas it's not ksuba, but regarding the tanai of the ksuba, so that no, mekarka gavi, that you can only collect from property. Metaltli gavi you cannot collect from movable items. Says the Gemara, but that's not true, because who's saying this teaching? It's Rebbe. Rabbi, according to Rebbe, idi, both of them for parnasa for nedunya and for mezainas mikvah gavi you can collect from metaltli. The time like Lunda Brisa. Whether it's assets that have insurance, which is always a keyword for karka, because you could always collect from that, it's always insured, meaning it's always there, it can't get lost, can't get stolen. Whether elements that are not insurable, the Rebbe says clearly that you could collect for the mazing, the food of the daughters, which Rashi says for sure parnasa. I don't have to tell you parnasa, meaning for the nedunya. But even for mezainis, because you would have thought to say that since it's a t'nai ksuba, which is the daughter getting fed, it should be like the ksuba itself, which that's not collected from metaltli, it's only collected from karka. So you would think mezainis is also, just as saying no, it's collected from metaltli. So you can't say that's the difference between parnasa, that's not like t'nai ksuba like mezainis, because they're both collected from metaltli. So what exactly is this halacha? Rebbe is telling us that parnasa is not like t'nai ksuba. Elamai parnasa in the t'nai ksuba, says the Gemara. What does it mean that parnasa in the dunya is not like the t'nai ksuba of mezainis? Look at time, it's for the following halacha. Or if someone says when he's passing away, Al yizoynu b'neisav nechasa, I don't want my daughters to get fed from this state. Allah has ain't shem we don't listen. Because he was already meshubed with the t'nai ksuba. When he got married to his wife, he already indebted himself to feed the daughters. So he has no choice to get out of it now. But if he says, that his daughter should not get a nedunya from his estate, this is what we had a reference from Taisus on Amad Aleph, that actually Shem, like we listened to him. Why? Shapanasa Eina, because the nedunya is not an obligation on the father, like a t'nai ksuba. It's only an obligation on the orphans where the father didn't command not to provide for them, because that's like we said, like when Misham and Sa'av, we evaluate how much the father would have wanted to give. So that's why it's an obligation on the orphans to give the nedunya for the sister. If the father says before he passes away, don't give, he has no halachic obligation to give a nedunya. It doesn't say anywhere in the ksuba, it's not a t'nai ksuba. So that's what we're saying, that parnasa is in the t'nai ksuba, that for parnasa he could tell before he passes away, I don't want you to give to the daughter anything, she won't get anything for the nedunya, in contrast to t'nai ksuba that has mezainis, where he can't say that because he has a halacha obligation to give mezainis to his daughter. It's written in the ksuba, he has to give. That's the difference that we meant. Parnasa infinite. So think of anything.